Hi, Tracy from Kazadans Equestrian and welcome back to my channel this week. This week I'm carrying on with my lameness series and I'm really hoping in this to be able to give people the opportunity to learn how to pick lameness in their horses a lot earlier, because the earlier we pick this, the better prognosis for the horse. Before I head on with this topic, if this is your first time to my channel, please don't forget to subscribe, like the video, put some comments below if you like, and share this around as much as you can. Any of this support really helps me to keep this channel alive. Okay, so let's start by just, a little bit of revision of why this lameness detection that we should be doing as owners is so very important. It's normally not until a lameness gets quite severe or quite chronic that people tend to engage a veterinarian, and all you're doing at this point is reducing the prognosis of a really good outcome for your horse. So the earlier we can pick this lameness, as soon as it's onset, get some treatment and proper evaluation straight away, the more likely your horse is to have 100% recovery and be able to continue performing the jobs that you would like it to perform. We want to move from only getting veterinary diagnosis, attention and treatment when these lamenesses are chronic or very advanced. We want to get to these earlier. And quite often, a rider will even feel a lameness prior to it becoming apparent on the ground. So if you're one of these people who has said to people on the ground, is my horse lame? Can you see anything? And they say, no, you're imagining it. You're probably not. Pain-mediated lameness, in which a horse is avoiding pain, so it changes its movement to avoid pain. A biomechanical lameness, which can actually be, a tightness or something in a muscle that either exaggerates a movement or limits it. Neurological lamenesses as well, and this normally shows up as the horse adjusting its gait to maintain balance. So let's start. If you haven't seen my number 1 video, please go back and review that, because in that I get you to take some specific videos of your horse, preferably in slow-mo, so that as I go through these videos, you can go and observe your own horse and see if you can see any of these changes to see whether there's any mild lameness present or not. We're going to start with looking at a unilateral lameness. Now this means a lameness in one side of the horse, because there are other different types of lamenesses. You know, we have the shifting lameness. We're very complicated and multifactorial lamenesses. And to start with these would be crazy. So let's start by just trying to get a technique to observe any unilateral asymmetry and lameness. Some of the reasons the other ones are harder to detect is, for example, if you've got bilateral lameness in both of your front legs, there's really nowhere for the horse to transfer that pain, because their pain is equal in both legs. So you're not going to see a very obvious asymmetry in that movement. And in any kind of multifactorial lameness, if the horse is limited by transferring weight or shifting its movement by pain somewhere else, quite often these lamenesses are really hard to detect, because these are when you see the horses who are just stepping short all round, but there's no obvious lameness, or refusing jumps for no obvious reason, or just not really using their body correctly. And these can be very difficult to assess unless you've got a pattern of observation for yourself down pat and very comfortable that you're able to then start to pick very tiny differences. It's why it's so important to practice looking at your horse. So as I go into these next few steps, we're going to assume that what we're looking for right now is a unilateral, quite a simple lameness. As I said, quite often these are easy to detect. However, we still don't detect them until it's quite severe and chronic. In the unilateral lameness, you will observe a horse trying to shift more weight onto one side. So it does become a bit more obvious, because you tend to see either some rolling of the front of the horse or the hind of the horse. So back to our word symmetry. Symmetry is so important. If you are not seeing symmetry in your horse, there is something going on somewhere. Now, maybe this is confirmation. Maybe they've always been like it. But if there's any asymmetry, you really do need to understand that that is a point of weakness in your horse, even if it isn't an overt lameness at the moment. When I talk about asymmetry, so I want you to go back and look at these videos that you've taken of your horse. I want you to look in particular in 4 different ways for asymmetry. The first way is in the axial movement. So either side of the horse, do they move in the same direction? Does it, for example, look like one front leg is in going into an imaginary hole? And of course, how overt that is can really determine the severity of the lameness in that. So if one side is doing that and the other side isn't, that's one form of asymmetry that you can see. The next type of asymmetry is in the quality of the stride. If you're sitting and looking at your horse and one of the limbs just isn't flowing through as much, although you can't see, I guess, any movement or shift of weight from side to side, however, one particular leg is just short stepping a little bit, this is an early lameness sign, without doubt. The next thing I'm going to look at for asymmetry is really, I guess, the movement or the gesturing of the limb. Is the limb going straight through? Now, there's very few horses whose limbs move looking front and hind on directly straight. But let's have a look at them. Are they both doing the same kind of thing? Are they doing 2 different things? Is one leg shifting out? Is one leg hitting the ground for less time? Is one leg being centered? I want you to observe that as well. And one of the last really easy ways to look is hoof wear. So the wear on your horse's hoof can give you an idea of the foot dynamics, how the horse is hitting the ground, where the weight is being transferred. So don't underestimate the importance of looking at how your horse is actually wearing that hoof. So let's go through the first 5 steps of a basic assessment. Ideally, you observe your horse or look at your videos. The reason I use slow-mo is because ideally you get the horses to walk slowly so that you can help with your eyes. Of course, if the horse is walking too slowly, you're going to say it's not tracking up and etc., etc. So that's why I find the slow-mo video in particularly very helpful, because you can also pause and just go frame by frame if you really think you saw something but you can't quite work it out. So slow-mo videos are your friend, or alternatively, get somebody else to move your horse out for you. So what's the first thing? Number 1 thing we're looking at is actually the overall anatomy and movement of your horse. At this stage, at the very early stage, I don't want you to focus on anything in particular. I don't want you to focus on legs. I don't want you to focus on hind legs, foreleg, head movement in particular. I want you to actually have, I guess, soft vision, use your peripheral vision, and have a look at the horse as a whole. And what we're looking for here is changes in that median anatomy. Now, the median anatomy is the anatomy down the center of the horse that, I guess, separates both sides, but can be quite indicative. So in particular at this phase, while you're looking at the whole horse, I want you to observe the head and neck and the oscillation of the wither up and down and the oscillation of the croup up and down. I want you to watch that and see if it looks symmetrical, see if it's variable, and just observe with open and soft eyes. Step 2, the next step is then to isolate the hind end and the front end. So observe your horse again and go back and say, I'm going to look at that video again, focusing on the front end. Front end only, no any asymmetry. And then we're going to do that again for the hind end. So we're looking at the overall horse, step 1. Step 2 is front end and hind end. During this, if you see an asymmetry, you're likely then to have determined which end of the horse the lameness is from and which side. Now, remember, we're talking about a simple unilateral lameness at the moment. So if you're not seeing this and you know your horse is lame, you're probably looking at either a bilateral or multifactorial lameness. So a little bit of help with this. If you see the wither moving asymmetrically, so every time the right foot gets put down, the wither drops a little bit more than when the left foot is put down. If there's something asymmetrical by looking at the oscillations of the wither, it is very likely you're looking at a front end lameness. The same with the croup. So if you're watching the oscillation of the croup going up and down, if you see asymmetry depending on which side the horse is putting their weight on, it is likely that you're looking at a hind end lameness. And again, vice versa. So if it is symmetrical in the wither and asymmetrical in the croup, it's likely you're looking at hind end lameness. And alternatively, if it's symmetrical in the croup and asymmetrical in the wither, it's likely you're looking at a front end lameness. This might seem simple, but we need to start and get this pattern of observation in, and some very clear, I guess, normal points to look at for your own horse so that you can see when they're abnormal for them. So step 3 is, after finding that side, we're going to observe the nature of the gait in that side. So we're saying, okay, it looks like it could be on the left side. It looks like it's in the front limb because of the wither movement. What is that left front limb doing? How is it moving? How's that limb moving through space? What we want to look at here is what is the alteration or the change in that movement compared to the other side. And once we're fairly confident the limb we're looking at is the limb that has the lameness, we also now want to look at bend and flexion and look at the body structures around that, and are they moving with asymmetry, or are they trying to shift weight or move weight or get balance around that? And 5, let's look for the specific gait characteristic that is showing asymmetry and maybe pointing to where the lameness is. Now, I know this is all high level, but this is a very complex topic. In fact, I think I might even do an ebook with this. This might be great with a flowchart or something. But I really want you to simply go back to those videos, go back to your horse and follow those steps of: number 1, look at the whole horse. Number 2, separate the horse front and hind end. Number 3, try to establish the side of the lameness. Number 4, observe that median activity, like, is the horse throwing its neck and head around? Remember, they use their neck and head a lot for weight and balance. Are they throwing that around? Are they avoiding flexion? Are they over flexing? Are they over bending or avoiding bending? And number 5, once you've isolated something, really identify those particular gait characteristics so that then we can go and nut down a little bit further and say, well, if the horse is moving like this, what is it trying to avoid? Really basic. First one, we're going to go into a little bit more detail about some very different types of lamenesses and how to look at them and how to work on it. Remember, this is not to not take your horse to the vet. This is for you to learn how to assess this earlier and pick up those minute lamenesses earlier, really, so you can get to the vet quicker and improve that prognosis for your horse and reduce the risk of a very chronic, severe lameness appearing slowly and getting to the point where it means early retirement or worse for your horse. I hope you found this video helpful and interesting. It may be a little bit tricky to follow, but if you hold on with me with this, I think that you will learn some really great observation techniques, so hang in there. Also, don't forget to like this video, share it, comment on it, and I will see you next week with the next installment.